Once upon a time, there was a little girl named
Angelina.
And this is a story about something that happened to Angelina on Thanksgiving when she was 7 years old. Now you remember that Angelina had an uncle, Uncle Travis. Uncle Travis lived in Schuylerville, New York. It was about 2.5 hours north of where she lived in Poughkeepsie. And Katie, do you remember what Uncle Travis did for a living?
Travis.
He raised
hunting dogs.
Hunting dogs, right. Labrador retrievers and a few other kinds, but mostly Labrador retrievers. And he had a dog that looked a lot like Chansey, but she was much bigger. Her name was Sandy. And Uncle Travis lived in a cabin in the woods, and he was he hunted all his own game, and he had a big vegetable garden. And not every Thanksgiving, but every couple of years, Angelina and her family would go up to visit Uncle Travis because that was Angelina's mother's brother, and they would have Thanksgiving at Uncle Travis's cabin in Schuylerville, New York. So what they did was they would, Angelina and her mother would usually leave on Tuesday afternoon in the station wagon. They had an old blue Falcon station wagon. And they'd drive up the New York State Thruway had just opened, and they would drive up on the New York State Thruway to Schuyler to Route 22, and then they'd get off on Route 22 and they'd drive to Schuylerville. And they'd go. Well, here's what happened. They got there on Tuesday afternoon, and Uncle Travis, and remember Uncle Travis's girlfriend's name? Patricia Urquhart. She was a retired Army nurse, and she played the organ. She played the organ at the Episcopal Church in Schuylerville, but she was there to help do all the cooking. And then Angelina's father was going to come up on Wednesday night. But here's what happened. When they got there Tuesday afternoon, Patricia had made lunch for Angelina, and she made tuna salad sandwiches. And she was a pretty good cook, too. Uncle Travis liked to cook, and they're always making stuff. But they got regular tuna fish from a can, and she mixed it with onions and mayonnaise and celery like Angelina liked it. And Angelina ate 1.5 sandwiches, and she had a little cup of chicken noodle soup. And then Patricia had made her 2 sandwiches, and she ate 1.5. So she said, well, I'd like to save the other half for a snack later on. So Patricia said, okay. She said, well, we'll put it in the refrigerator. But Uncle Travis didn't really have a refrigerator. He had an ice box. And it was a wooden box that you put ice in, and that's what kept his food cold.
Kind of like a cooler.
Yeah, kind of like a big cooler. So anyway, they got to talking, and they forgot to put the tuna salad sandwich in the ice box. And so it sat out on the counter. And about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Angelina came inside from taking Sandy for a walk, and they'd been out. She was helping Uncle Travis bring in wood, and she saw the sandwich sitting there on the counter, and she's like, oh, I'm pretty hungry. I think I'll just have the rest of this sandwich. So she ate the sandwich. What had happened was it had mayonnaise in it, and it had been sitting out because it was cold outside, and Uncle Travis had the wood stove going on, and the mayonnaise went bad, and she got a disease called salmonella. And so that night she started getting sick to her stomach and throwing up, and they had to take her to the hospital. And they couldn't figure out, they didn't know what was the matter with her because they asked her what she ate. And she said, well, I had my lunch and I had soup, and the mother was there, and then they called Angelina's father, and he came up a day early. It wasn't a very good hospital either. They were talking about driving her in an ambulance to Albany to take her to a gastrointestinologist. Is that the right word?
Gastroenterologist.
Yeah, enterologist, and But finally, some old country doctor came in, and they told him what happened, and he said, "Well, did you have tuna fish?" And they said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, how long had it been sitting out?" She said, "Well, she ate it right away." And then Patricia said, "No, she ate the sandwich that had been sitting on the counter." So they figured out that's what she had. She had to have her stomach pumped, and she had to have anesthesia, and she had to stay in the hospital 2 days. And when she got out, her father had come up from Poughkeepsie, and he brought Skippy with him, and they had a Thanksgiving dinner that was 3 days late. And when Angelina came home from the hospital, Everybody was welcome home, Angelina. And Angelina was still kind of shaky. They took her out of the hospital in a wheelchair, but she got in the car and she came to Uncle Travis's cabin. And Uncle Travis came out to the door and he was going to carry her inside. And when he did, Skippy was there, and Skippy heard the car coming up the driveway, and he wasn't a good dog like Sandy. Skippy barked all the time. Remember how he barked? And he was scratching at the door, but when Uncle Travis carried Angelina inside, Skippy was so excited. Guess what he did?
Feet on the rug.
Peed on the rug.